Jake Carter wiped the last streak of grease from his calloused hands, the late afternoon sun already sliding behind the quaint row of buildings that made up the heart of Fairhaven, Iowa. He closed up his auto shop, flipping the sign from open to closed, and let his gaze settle over the silent street. The sky stretched wide and endless above him, its burnished gold gradually dissolving into dusky pink. Even in such an unassuming town, the horizon could carry a promise of wonder. He breathed a soft sigh, thinking of how each day felt much the same. Repair cars, chat with passing neighbors, then retreat to his modest apartment above Mason's Hardware. Yet despite the routine, he harbored a hidden longing, a faint sparkle of hope that somewhere out there, the miraculous might touch his ordinary life. He walked to his apartment, climbed the rickety stairs, and heard the familiar creak underfoot. After fixing a meager dinner of canned soup and crackers, he settled into a worn armchair by the window. From there, he observed the final sliver of sun sink below the horizon. Once the glow faded, darkness embraced the little town, leaving Jake to contemplate a life filled with too many quiet evenings and far too few surprises. A restlessness stirred in his heart, urging him to seek something beyond the walls of his daily tasks and small-town boundaries. In that moment, he remembered hearing about the night flea market that had arrived in Fairhaven for the weekend. On impulse, he decided to head there. He left his apartment in a rush, trotting down the stairs, hearing the squeak of each step as though it were cheering him on. The streetlights flickered as he walked, casting long shadows across the pavement. A slight breeze carried the scent of popcorn and cotton candy from the fairgrounds, distant yet enticing. Despite the comfortable familiarity of his hometown, tonight the air felt charged with possibility, as though destiny hovered just around the corner. When Jake arrived at the makeshift flea market, he found rows of rickety stands and brightly colored tents, each featuring its own array of curios and knickknacks. The chatter of vendors and the delighted exclamations of browsers swirled around him in a pleasant cacophony. He strolled past tables laden with antique dolls, secondhand comics, and battered instruments that hummed with old stories. Now and then, he paused to admire something, an ancient compass, a faded painting of a lost seashore, but always he moved on. Nothing truly captured him. Nothing felt significant enough to break the quiet pattern of his life. Until he spotted a small, unremarkable booth at the end of a narrow lane. A single lamp cast a dim light over the figure of an old man, hunched over a low wooden crate. Before the man lay an array of glass bottles, none larger than a soda can, each shimmering under that lonely lamp with colors Jake couldn't quite name. At first glance, they appeared like ordinary knickknacks, but something about their translucent glow, shifting through blues and violets and greens, held his gaze. The old man glanced up and beckoned. His voice, though soft, held an authority that made Jake's heart skip. "Come closer, young fellow," he said, his milky eyes locking onto Jake. "Perhaps you'll find something among my wares." Jake approached, curious yet cautious. The man gently lifted one bottle in particular, holding it as though it were a fragile artifact from a forgotten world. Indeed, the bottle's glass seemed alive, swirling with internal luminescence. Jake felt a tingle of excitement travel through his fingers as he held it. His mind told him it was simply a trick of the lamplight, yet his heart insisted there was more to it. "How much?" Jake asked softly, though a part of him anticipated some outrageous price. The old man narrowed his eyes, seeming to measure him. Then, to Jake's surprise, the man named a sum so modest it was practically a gift. Confused but intrigued, Jake handed over a few worn bills. He placed the bottle carefully into his jacket pocket, feeling its strange warmth radiate through the fabric. The old man leaned in, whispering something inaudible. Jake caught only a few fragments. "Destiny, cosmic, don't ignore," before the breeze picked up and carried the man's voice away. It left Jake unsettled, yet strangely elated. He returned to his apartment and drew the curtains, the lamp on his desk illuminating the small space. With reverent care, he lifted the bottle out and placed it on the table. It glowed with elusive colors that flickered like distant galaxies. Nervously, he tapped the glass, half expecting nothing. But the bottle's surface felt alive, vibrating with subtle energy beneath his fingertips. Without fully understanding why, he felt an urgent compulsion to open it. So he twisted the ornate stopper at its top, bracing himself for whatever might happen. A sudden gust of wind whooshed through the room, rattling the window panes and snuffing out the lamp's feeble flame. In the darkness, Jake's heart pounded like a drum. A moment later, the lamp flickered back to life, revealing a figure standing before him. A woman, her form delicate and ethereal, her eyes holding the brilliance of distant stars. For a stretch of breathless seconds, Jake could only stare. She stood tall, draped in robes that shimmered with cosmic patterns. Yet there was warmth in her gaze, a gentle curiosity. She offered a soft smile, tilting her head in greeting. "I am Lena," she spoke, her voice quiet but resonating like a perfectly tuned chord. "I am bound by cosmic law to grant you 3 wishes." Jake blinked in disbelief, certain he must be dreaming. But the reality of her presence defied all conventional explanation. Although he'd heard stories about genies in battered storybooks, none had described a being like her, radiating an aura of universal majesty. "A genie," he managed to say, his voice cracking with both awe and confusion. "In a manner of speaking," she replied. "I am a quantum djinn, woven from strands of cosmic energy, keeper of eons' worth of knowledge. By unlocking my vessel, you have initiated a sacred contract. Ask, and your desires shall be fulfilled." Jake stumbled backward into his chair, his mind reeling. He tried to recall the old man's cryptic words, how the bottle had gleamed in his booth under a single lamp. I don't know what to ask for," he finally admitted, forcing a wry chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. "I'm just a mechanic. My life is normal." Lena smiled, her expression compassionate. "You need not decide right away. The bond will remain until 3 wishes are completed. Take the time you need, Jake Carter, to choose wisely." So began a strange companionship that defied all reason. In the days that followed, Jake found himself confiding in Lena, describing his humble life and the quiet dreams he harbored. She listened, genuinely curious about the mundane corners of his existence, for she had spent much of her own existence traveling from one wishmaker to another. She was both infinitely knowing and strangely naive, eager to learn about human ways, wondering at the details he took for granted. They shared unhurried moments under the wide Iowa sky, strolling through the farmland on the outskirts of Fairhaven, watching how sunlight gilded the cornfields at dusk. Over chipped mugs of coffee in Jake's kitchen, they spoke of the cosmos, of black holes and neutron stars, of the swirling tapestry of galaxies. Jake found himself entranced, not merely by Lena's celestial origins, but by her gentle spirit. Perhaps it was foolish to grow attached to a being with immeasurable power, yet he could not help the warmth blooming in his heart. For her part, Lena seemed equally fascinated by Jake. There was a quiet determination in him, a goodness that radiated through every small act. How he'd stay late at the auto shop, helping a stranded traveler without charging them extra. How he'd offer a kind word to Mrs. Jacobs, the widow next door, collecting her mail and checking on her each evening. Every gesture, no matter how ordinary, glowed with a simple nobility. She wondered if she had ever encountered someone so inherently kind across the countless mortal lifespans she had witnessed. In her millennia of existence, Lena had granted outlandish wishes. Kings who asked for infinite gold, conquerors who yearned for unstoppable armies, dreamers who sought immortality. Yet none of them had possessed Jake's patient humility. He insisted on waiting to make his first wish, wanting to be certain it was the right request. Sometimes they would sit side by side, legs dangling off the tailgate of a dusty pickup truck, gazing at the star-strewn vault of night. The entire universe out there, Jake mused. And here we are, just existing. Pretty humbling, huh? Lena would nod, her eyes reflecting galaxies. "We are indeed small from a certain perspective," she would say. "And yet in each of us, the entire cosmos may reside." One evening, as the crickets chirped in the warm summer air, Lena sensed a shift in Jake's demeanor. He turned to her, his eyes thoughtful yet determined. "Lena," he murmured, voice trembling with sincerity, "I think I'm ready for my first wish." She inclined her head, feeling her heart flutter even though cosmic beings did not truly share the same physiology as humans. "Speak, and it shall be done." He paused, took a deep breath, and then softly said, "I wish to marry you." For a fraction of time, it felt as if the entire cosmos held its breath. Lena, despite her immeasurable wisdom and power, stood speechless. She had expected wealth, success, cures for unspeakable illnesses, perhaps even an end to war. But marriage, bonding his mortal life to hers, was a wish entirely unanticipated. The gravity of his words settled over her, and she realized that in all her wanderings, she had never before been asked for her heart. At last she found her voice, quiet and tinged with awe. "Why this wish?" she whispered, searching his eyes for truth. Jake turned his gaze to the stars overhead, struggling to articulate the emotions that had grown over the past weeks. "You're more than just some magical being," he said gently. "You're kind, you're curious, you've shown me wonders I never dreamed of. And when I think of my life without you, I don't want to go back to that emptiness. I know this might seem rash, but I wish to be bound to you, not because I want to own or trap you, but because I love you. And I hope you can find it in yourself to love me back." Tears sparkled in Lena's otherworldly eyes as she reflected on the countless centuries she had lived, drifting from one ephemeral bond to another, never allowed the freedom to truly belong. For the first time, she felt a yearning to share her cosmic existence with someone who cherished her for more than what she could grant. She recognized in Jake a love that was unselfish, unwavering, transcending the boundaries between the mortal and the infinite. In that tender moment, she placed her hand upon his. "Yes," she said softly, a single tear tracing her luminous cheek. "I grant your wish." A gentle glow enveloped them both. The night air shimmered, and the stars themselves seemed to surge in brilliance. Lena's cosmic energy mingled with Jake's mortal essence, forging a bond that neither cosmic edict nor mortal boundary had foreseen. When the light subsided, Lena and Jake stood as one, married by cosmic decree, hearts woven together in defiance of the laws that had governed her existence for untold millennia. Their union did not go unnoticed. Beyond the veil of mortal perception lay the domain of cosmic enforcers, beings of pure energy who safeguarded the fabric of reality. Known simply as the keepers of order, they were tasked with ensuring the ancient rules were upheld, among them the rule that quantum Jinn could never become emotionally bound to mortals. By wedding Jake, Lena had shattered that edict, generating a rupture in the cosmic tapestry. Thus, one morning, as dawn broke in pastel hues over Fairhaven, a vortex of swirling light appeared in Jake's modest living room. A tremor ran through the floor, rattling dishes and picture frames. Lena stood abruptly, her senses alert to a power that dwarfed even her own. Jake stumbled to her side, fear racing through his veins. From within the vortex stepped 3 figures of luminous countenance, each robed in scintillating energy that crackled like living lightning. Their eyes bore the wisdom of galaxies. "In the name of the cosmic law, we have come," declared the foremost figure, his voice resonating like distant thunder. "Lena, quantum Jinn of the 10th strand, you stand accused of forging a forbidden bond. Jake Carter, mortal of Earth, you stand accused of complicity in cosmic transgression." Jake felt the blood drain from his face, yet Lena placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. She faced the enforcers, her voice calm, yet determined. "I knew the risks," she admitted, "and I do not regret them. I have lived through eons granting the selfish whims of mortals, yet in this man, I found a love that is true. We ask you to show mercy." The cosmic enforcers conferred with one another in a silent communion that spanned no more than a heartbeat. Then the center figure fixed his gaze upon the newlywed couple. "Mercy cannot be given without proof," he intoned. "The cosmic tapestry is delicate, and your union tears at its threads. If you claim this bond is genuine, then let it be tested across the infinite realms. Survive the trial, prove that your love is no cosmic mistake, and perhaps you shall earn leniency. Fail, and both of you will be unmade." Without further warning, the enforcers raised their glowing hands, releasing an energy that surged through Jake and Lena like an electric current. Reality around them fractured into shards of light. Jake felt the world dissolve, the familiar outlines of his apartment spinning into chaos. He clutched Lena's hand, determined not to lose her in the whirling maelstrom. Then, a flash, and everything went black. When Jake opened his eyes, he found himself standing atop a neon-lit skyscraper, A city sprawling below him bathed in flickering holograms and towering steel spires. The sky was choked with pollution, the roads crowded with hovering vehicles. Buzzing drones zipped past, scanning the environment with cold, mechanical eyes. He wore a tattered trench coat, his pockets filled with unfamiliar electronic gadgets. His breath caught in his throat as he peered into this futuristic dystopia. Where was Lena? Desperate, he sprinted down steel staircases, weaving through cramped alleyways where neon signs advertised cybernetic implants and synthetic pleasure. The denizens wore mechanical enhancements, robotic arms, glowing eyes, metal plating along their skulls. Jake's heart hammered. He had never felt so alone, so lost. But he refused to abandon hope. He had to find Lena. Days turned to weeks in that futuristic nightmare. Jake scraped together a life, trading his mechanical skills for scraps of currency, hoping each day to catch a glimpse of Lena. He searched data clusters, rummaged through corporate archives, asking every contact about a mysterious woman who radiated starlight. Most took him for a madman, but a few hushed whispers suggested an underground rumor. Sightings of a figure who could manipulate quantum fields at will, rumored to be a renegade experiment. Following the trail, Jake ventured into the city's deepest underbelly, navigating tunnels guarded by augmented soldiers and automated turrets. Eventually, in a hidden lab with flickering fluorescent lights, he found her. Lena was shackled to a steel slab, unconscious, her cosmic essence contained by dampening fields. A group of corporate scientists fussed over control panels, eager to harness her powers for profitable weaponry. At the sight of her pale face, Jake's heart clenched with a fierce protectiveness. Summoning courage, Jake sabotaged the lab's security systems. He crawled through ventilation shafts, hot wires clutched in his hands, connecting them to the arrays that contained Lena's powers. Sparks flew as he dismantled the dampeners. With each severed circuit, color flooded back into Lena's cheeks. At last she opened her eyes, saw him, and tears immediately welled. The embrace that followed might have been brief, but it radiated a cosmic warmth that seemed to halt time. The scientists attacked, but Lena unleashed a wave of quantum energy that disintegrated the shackles. She cast a protective field around Jake, deflecting bullets and plasma bursts. They escaped through the bowels of the city, vanishing into the labyrinth of neon signage and smog. Huddled in a decaying rooftop shelter, they clung to each other, gasping at the narrowness of their salvation. And then, the air shimmered once more, as it had that morning in Fairhaven. The cosmic enforcers' voices echoed through the smog-filled sky. One trial complete, they pronounced. But this journey is not finished. A swirl of color enveloped them, and the cyberpunk city dissolved into oblivion. Jake and Lena emerged in a war-torn future. Thick clouds of ash blocked the sun's rays, and the land below was scorched. Ruined buildings stood like broken teeth against a blackened horizon. Sirens wailed in the distance, and battered vehicles lined the cratered roads. People dressed in ragged uniforms hurried past, rifles slung across their backs, their faces etched with despair. Without time to catch their breath, a group of haggard soldiers commandeered Jake and Lena, assuming they were refugees. "We're losing ground," a woman shouted, waving them into an underground bunker. "If you want to live, come with us." Down in the bunker, by the pale light of emergency lamps, Jake learned that humanity was on the brink of annihilation, beset by a legion of monstrous entities awakened from the Earth's core. Lena's cosmic senses picked up ripples of distortion, an anomaly she recognized as a tear in reality itself. These creatures were not natural enemies, but rather rifts in the cosmic tapestry, side effects of the cosmic enforcer's meddling. Determined to assist, Jake and Lena offered their help. Jake's mechanical prowess proved invaluable. He helped repair vehicles, design improvised artillery, and restore the bunker's faltering power grid. Meanwhile, Lena discreetly lent her energies to shield the camp from devastation, masking her interventions as mere strokes of luck. Whispers of divine protection spread, and hope rekindled among the weary fighters. But as battles raged, supply lines failed, and morale wavered. An enormous surge of monstrous creatures advanced, threatening to wipe out the last bastion of human resistance. In that critical hour, Lena stepped forth, cosmic energies swirling around her like a living nebula. She summoned a barrier of shimmering light that halted the monstrous tide. Faced with such awe-inspiring power, both ally and enemy froze in disbelief. Yet exerting such cosmic might came at a cost. Lena's body flickered, her form straining under the laws of this broken dimension. Seeing her in peril, Jake raced forward, disregarding his own safety. He stood beside her, his presence lending her emotional support. Their love glowed like an anchor, stabilizing her cosmic energies. In that moment, the monstrous horde retreated, sensing the might that emanated from their union. Once again, reality tore. The enforcers' voices echoed, proclaiming that their trial continued. Jake barely had time to catch Lena as she collapsed from the strain. Then a flash of brilliant light enveloped them, twisting the war-torn landscape into swirling fragments. They reappeared in a realm that felt plucked from an old fairy tale, lush emerald forests under pastel skies. Strange creatures flitted between the ancient trees, and the scent of jasmine perfumed the warm air. Ornate castles rose in the distance, their spires gleaming in sunlight that seemed somehow gentler than Earth's. This enchanted realm brimmed with magical creatures. Griffins soared overhead, and talking foxes peered at Jake curiously from behind blossoming shrubs. Right away, they sensed that the local inhabitants possessed their own form of arcane magic, different from Lena's cosmic powers, yet powerful in its own right. Rumors swirled of a prophecy foretelling the arrival of two star-crossed lovers who would unite cosmic and arcane forces to bring lasting peace. Soon, word reached the ears of the realm's reigning monarch, Queen Estrida. Summoned to the royal court, Jake and Lena traveled days through enchanted paths and winding rivers that gleamed in the starlight. At night, glowing wisps guided their journey. Each step brought them closer together, their bond fortified by the trials they had overcome, yet uncertain about what new tribulations awaited in this world of myth. Lena constantly sensed the presence of cosmic watchers, the enforcers who observed, waiting to see if they would falter. At the Queen's palace, built of opalescent stone that seemed to sing when touched by wind, they were greeted by an assembly of robed mages. Queen Estrida, regal in attire woven with starlight threads, welcomed them with open arms. She spoke of her beleaguered realm, riven by discord among the magical races, elves, dwarves, and merfolk. A dreadful dragon, said to be spawned from a dark dimension, terrorized the land. In the prophecy, it was foretold that only a union of cosmic and mortal might could quell the beast. Lena and Jake were asked to stand as champions, bridging the realm's divisions. Though wearied by trials, they could not refuse. Through delicate diplomacy and demonstrations of goodwill, Jake and Lena journeyed to elven groves, dwarven strongholds, and undersea merfolk enclaves. They brokered fragile truces, urging unity in the face of the monstrous threat. Their efforts culminated in a grand council, an event not seen in centuries, where representatives of all races gathered. But talk alone could not defeat the dragon. On the eve of a red moon, the beast arrived, roaring across the skies. Flames rained upon the palace, and magical wards shimmered like battered shields. The combined forces rallied under Jake's leadership, forging a defense that strove to protect the city's inhabitants. Meanwhile, Lena ascended to the palace's highest tower, cosmic energy radiating from her palms. The ground shook, the air quivered with heat. Jake led the knights into the fray, sweat dripping from his brow as he clashed with the dragon's lesser minions, draconic constructs spawned by the creature's dark breath. Through the chaos, he glimpsed the sky overhead, where Lena hovered, her form bathed in the ephemeral glow of starlight. She extended her hands, and a shimmering net of cosmic force enveloped the dragon, trying to subdue its destructive fury. Yet the dragon possessed potent magic of its own. With a roar, it unleashed a torrent of shadowy flames that battered Lena's shields. Jake, seeing her struggle, cried out her name, surging forward through the chaos with raw determination. He reached the base of the tower, clambered up the winding stairs, refusing to retreat despite the intense heat and the dragon's relentless assault. At last, he stood by Lena's side atop the tower. A swirl of cosmic energy and arcane power danced around them both, the very air trembling with the force of their united will. "We'll stop it together," Jake whispered, placing his hand over hers, his heart pounding with love and fear. Their bond ignited into a crescendo of power, combining the cosmic and the mortal with the ambient magic of the realm. In a dazzling burst that lit up the sky for miles around, the dragon's wrath was extinguished, its dark flames snuffed out. With a final screech, it plunged from the heavens, crashing into the forests below, where it dissolved into harmless embers. A hush fell across the land, the eerie silence slowly giving way to cheers of relief and joy. In the afterglow of victory, the cosmic enforcers manifested once more, their presence swirling with unimaginable power. The realm's inhabitants knelt in awe, but Jake and Lena stood firm, having come to expect this intrusion. One of the luminous beings extended his arm, addressing them both. "You have proven the depth of your love across worlds," he declared, voice echoing in the ears of every living soul present. "We cannot deny what the cosmos itself has witnessed. Your bond endures, a thread of unity weaving through every plane of existence." Jake helped Lena remain steady. She trembled from exertion, and he could feel her fatigue, her cosmic aura flickering. Yet she looked at the enforcers with defiance. "Will you let us live in peace?" she asked, voice edged with both hope and lingering tension. The enforcers exchanged silent looks. Their collective decision rippled across the magical kingdom, shimmering in the very air. "By right of trial, your union is sanctioned," they finally pronounced. "Lena shall remain a quantum djinn, retaining her power. And Jake Carter, mortal of Earth, shall be granted a prolonged existence, that he may walk alongside her across the eons." Relief and gratitude washed over them. Jake exhaled, feeling tears well in his eyes. Lena's tense posture eased, and she gazed at him in wonder, joy illuminating her face. The cosmic watchers vanished, dissolving into motes of light. For a moment, the entire kingdom erupted into celebration. Elves, dwarves, merfolk, humans, all rejoicing together. In that swirl of revelry, a portal formed, beckoning Jake and Lena back to their original world. Bidding farewell to Queen Estrida and the new friends they had gained, the couple stepped through. Light gave way to the familiar sight of Jake's cozy living room in Fairhaven, Iowa. They found themselves back on that same morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, dust motes dancing in the gentle beams. It was as though no time had passed, and yet an unspoken eternity lay behind them. Jake drew Lena close, their foreheads touching. "We did it," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. She nodded, tears of joy glistening like stardust in her eyes. Word traveled through the cosmos of their triumphant return, passing from one dimension to another, celebrated by those who had witnessed their extraordinary feats. Meanwhile, life in Fairhaven resumed its simple rhythms, yet everything felt different. Jake still worked at his auto shop, but no longer was his life ordinary. Lena stood at his side, sometimes cloaked in a subtle human guise, sometimes shining with full cosmic brilliance. Through secret channels, they corresponded with interstellar emissaries, forging connections between Earth and distant civilizations. At night, the two would ascend to the roof of Mason's Hardware, where they would lie side by side, gazing at the boundless night sky. Lena, no longer confined to a bottle, found joy in every mortal moment, sharing jokes with townspeople, tending gardens under a golden afternoon sun, even marveling at the taste of fresh apple pie from the local diner. In turn, Jake learned to see beyond the horizon of earthly concerns, glimpsing the vast tapestry that Lena once traveled alone. He discovered that love need not be constrained by the limitations of mortal lifespan or cosmic code. Soon, the people of Fairhaven began to notice that Jake no longer seemed to age. Decades passed, yet his hair remained dark, his frame still lean and strong. Lena, of course, looked as otherworldly as ever, though she took care to shield her radiant form from public eyes. Whispers circulated, but in a small town like Fairhaven, folks generally preferred a comfortable explanation over a fantastical truth. Some concluded that the Carters simply aged gracefully or had excellent genes. Others suspected some cosmic secret. But as the years turned, the townspeople who cared most for Jake and Lena simply accepted them, content to let the mystery be. From time to time, cosmic travelers arrived under the cover of night, messengers from advanced star nations, or watchers from parallel dimensions. They sought counsel from the couple whose love had altered cosmic law itself. Jake and Lena greeted them warmly, guiding them to spare rooms or offering them coffee at the kitchen table. Over interstellar maps, they discussed forging alliances between Earth and distant systems, bridging the gap between mortal and infinite. The cosmic enforcers remained a distant memory, no longer a looming threat, but rather silent guardians, occasionally peering through dimensional rifts to ensure that the cosmic tapestry remained intact. Jake still possessed 2 remaining wishes, yet he hesitated to use them. After all, what more could he desire? He had the love of Lena, a new purpose that transcended the walls of his little workshop, and a chance to explore the grand expanse of the universe at her side. They journeyed together, on some days tinkering with old car engines, on others traversing wormholes and learning to harness new cosmic energies. Each day, a reflection of their unity, each night, a lullaby of infinite stars. And so, life carried on in that gentle Midwestern town, unassuming to many, yet blessed by the cosmic union of 2 extraordinary souls. The future lay open like a grand cosmic scroll, waiting to be written by Jake and Lena's boundless devotion. They walked hand in hand, certain that no matter what unknown horizons appeared, their bond would light the path. For as they had proven across worlds and centuries, theirs was a love undeterred by mortal limitations or cosmic decree, a love that could spark hope in every realm it touched. And so, in Fairhaven and beyond, they lived happily ever after, forging a new legend, not merely of a genie and a mechanic, but of 2 hearts that dared to unite, and in doing so, redefined the stars themselves.